Welcome everybody. I'm glad to see you all here. The Homeless Task Force meeting for 2 March. So very quickly, I think we'll just start with Alan, and then we'll go through some real quick introductions of who you are, what you do. How's that?
Great. Thank you so much. Me, Alan? Yes.
Yes.
Great. I'm Alan Greenlee. Happy to be here today. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, and I have 2 of my colleagues with me here today.
Welcome. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Rodney Tanaka from the city of Gardena, and I am your chair.
Good afternoon. I'm Vaughn Norris, City of Hawthorne.
Craig Townsend, Sunrise Properties.
Alexander Montero, City Council Member for City of Hawthorne.
Bill Uphoff, Councilman, City of Alameda.
Don't be shy.
Hello, Jennifer Lamarque, Field Deputy with Supervisor Janice on.
Jackie Backrack, COG.
Hi, Courtney Reed, PATH.
Sherry Weaver, Harbor Interface Services.
Hi, Caitlin Muldoon, Field Deputy for Councilman Joe Buscaino for Harbor City and Harbor Gateway.
Max Estrada, Regional Coordinator for the Adult System, Harbor Interfaith Services.
Hi, everyone. Roberto Chavez with the City of Inglewood Housing Authority. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Keith
Jordan
Bennett.
Stokes, City of Torrance.
Keith Bennett, City of Carson, Community Development Department.
Kimberly Mack, City of Hawthorne, Director of Housing.
Mackenzie Bright, City of Rancho Palos Verdes.
Hi, my name's Diana. I'm with the City of Gardena Human Services Department.
Bernadette Suarez, City of Londo.
I'm Nancy Wilcox with the Homeless Coalition.
I'm Angela Crespi with City of Hermosa Beach.
Hi, it's Ashley O with CEO, LA County.
Lori Jacobs with the COG, Homeless and Senior Services.
Anna Reed with the PATH Program Manager for Outreach.
Lori Jones, City.
Go for it, Lori.
Lori Jones, City of Inglewood.
Ariana Banco Jukes, SCAMP Public Affairs Manager.
John LaRock, City of Torrance, Community Services.
I'm Eric Ponce, Office of Assembly Member Brent Suchi.
And I'm Angelica Zavala with the City of Redondo Beach.
Janet Turner with the Office of Congressman Ted Lieu.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm with the City of Redondo Beach.
Okay, so we got a pause there. So I'm assuming that we got everybody that's on this meeting today. So welcome to everybody. We're glad you all joined, and we're just happy that there's such an interest in homeless issues. Reaching out to 5 January, our last meeting, and our meeting notes, was there anybody that had any changes, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, I think we'll just receive and file that. Okay, Jackie? And then we'll move on to SPA 8 service provider updates, and we'll start with Courtney.
All right, let me put up the presentation. Give me 1 second, sorry.
All right, and Anna's actually going to present today.
Thank you.
Well, Anna, me and Anna.
Okay.
Sorry.
So while that's coming up, I'll just introduce myself again, along with Anna. I'm Courtney Reed. I'm the Associate Director for PATH in the South Bay. We're Spot 8. And Anna is the Program Manager. She oversees the street-based intensive case management team. And we will give you an update on our services since the last time we met in January. So go ahead, Anna.
Hi everyone, once again, I am Anna, like we mentioned. This is our team. We have introduced a new member. Let's start from the left to the right. On the left-hand side, we have Jillian. She has been with us with almost a year. Then we have Jenny, who is our newest member, and then Stephanie, who is almost 2 years with us as well. Next slide. This is a breakdown of where the two individuals are, Jillian and Stephanie. Jenny is still in the process of shadowing and learning or integrating herself into a team. So she's shadowing both Jillian and Stephanie, but this is a little breakdown of where they are. Next slide. We have continued usage of LA Hub, which is the website that lets community members make direct contacts or direct referrals to outreach team in all of the region. Next slide. And this is a brief breakdown of the last few requests that we've had. Since January to February, we've only had 5 requests. And down below is a brief breakdown of the cities. For Carson, we had one request. For Torrance, we had 2 requests. And Hawthorne, we had 1 request, and then West Athens, 1 as well. Next slide. Some community connections that we've obtained. Some of them are pretty much the same as last time. The ones that we've added is the Hendry Encampment in Hawthorne. That one is behind the Costco by the railroad tracks. We've also connected with the Athens shelter or the Athens Park shelter. We've connected some individuals or interacted with some of them as well. And every last Wednesday of each month, we do homeless court, Redondo Beach homeless court. Next slide. More community connections that we've had. With Torrance, we've established a weekly joint outreach between Harbor Interfaith staff, Valerie Hernandez, and also a PATH team. It's mostly every Thursday, but it can vary throughout the week as well, depending on when the appointments are made with participants from there or when Valerie needs more assistance. We've also maintained joint outreaches with LASA's host team, Hawthorne's Charities Department, and PATH to connect with the Hendry Encampment and Hawthorne as well. On February 23rd, we helped out for the homeless count in Gardena. And once again, the Athens shelter, that is where we contacted transitional age youth and a senior as well, who was connected to recuperative housing care. We've also been connected with Venice Family Clinic, Dr. Coley King. He has joined our team in some of that joint outreaches, and he has been exploring possible locations where a mobile clinic would be best beneficial to our regions as well. Next slide. And so this is a brief breakdown of our numbers since September and October, for which is when our contracts have been renewed. For the SD4 and SD2, we did have the locations kind of switch up this past 2 months since there was a new map or an updated redistricting. So for SD4, we've obtained 2 mental health connections, 6 primary cares, 2 substance dependency, increased income for 4 individuals, and 5 permanent housings. For SD2, we've had 1 mental health, 9 primary care, substance dependency for 2 individuals, 2 increased incomes, and 7 permanent housing. And at the bottom, we have the total caseload. For SD4, we have 14 individuals, and out of those 14, 12 are seniors. For SD2, 29 individuals, and out of those are 10 seniors. Next slide. Our current efforts year to date. Since September and October, we've had 18 new enrollments. We've had 10 referrals to rapid rehousing, 8 referrals to tiny home and pallet shelters, and 18 to interim housing. For housing vouchers, everyone in a caseload usually has a voucher already in place or an interest form submitted for them. So we've so far submitted 52. The vouchers that have been matched are 24, and only 2 have been officially issued or received. Next slide. Some of the challenges that we've received or experienced in the course of the period. Short staffing at the moment, like we said, we only have 3 team members, 1 who just recently joined and she's still under training processes. We've also experienced COVID restrictions, closed offices. Our team did experience a brief outbreak. So for a couple of days and weeks, we weren't available to go out and outreach. Our shelters around the area, not just in spot A, but around different spots have been under quarantine. They either go off quarantine for a day or 2, and then they're back under quarantine again. And also another challenge that we all know is low availability of affordable housing, and also the waiting period for vouchers to be matched and then issued is also pretty long and undetermined as well. So that's been an issue as well. Next slide. This is Miss Stephanie. She is one of the individuals that was recently housed. She was previously sleeping in her car, couch surfing once in a while, but mostly in her car. She is a senior. We were able to place her in an affordable housing. She is still in the waiting process to get a voucher. And in the meantime, while she is waiting, we have referred her to Street to Subsidy for continual rental. Next slide. The next story is of Miss Patricia. She declined a picture, but she was glad to share her story. She was experiencing homelessness as well, sleeping in her car. She became homeless due to not having any family or friends to help her out with anything. She was encountered by the outreach team, and she first was placed in a motel, and while she was in the motel, they were able to get her some documentation, increase her income. At the moment, she is housed in an affordable unit and is still waiting on the voucher as well. She has also been referred to Street to Subsidy for continued rental assistance. Next slide. Teamwork makes the dream work once again. We have the team out here outreaching. On the left-hand side, we have Jenny and Jillian encountering an individual who was sleeping next to the West Athens shelter. And on the right-hand side, we have Stephanie alongside sitting there. Next slide. Some future consideration. Again, more affordable housing units, including senior housing within the South Bay cities. This is something that we've encountered as a state. There has been an increase of senior numbers or individuals who are seniors and are experiencing homelessness, but the resources available to them are very limited. So we want to ask for a little bit more resources, or if you know of any other resources that you would like to share, that'll be great. And the continued exposure of the usage of LA Hop within each city. Like I mentioned before, we've only had 5 requests. In the past, we've had like 15, 12. So it's a drastic change of number. Next slide. This is our contact information of Courtney and myself. If you ever need to make a referral, need further information, have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Next slide. A special thank you to Ronta and Laurie for donating to or helping us get 250 hygiene kits. That was extremely helpful for our participants. This came very handy when the cold came out. We were handing things left and right. So thank you to both. Next slide. And thank you for everyone for listening.
Just want to make a quick comment. I actually was really interested in this note that Dr. King. So for those who don't know, Dr. King is actually kind of a legend. He's been a big pioneer of street medicine in Venice, And for him to have interest in our area is kind of newsworthy to me. So I'm gonna go kind of talk to Venice Family Clinic and see what they're looking to do and report back to this body to see what I can find out. I know we're currently also looking to do a pilot program for a psychiatric mobile mental health team. And so I wonder if there's synergies here. So that was really interesting. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and to add to that, Venice Family Clinic merged with South Bay Clinic, and so they're going to be in the South Bay. And Dr. King, I know him from Spot 5. He is a legend, definitely a pioneer of street medicine. And he, so we connected, and he's going to be joining us for outreach, trying to find places in the South Bay to not necessarily step on DHS toes where they already are, so it won't be like double work. And so he will be outreaching with us. We're trying to establish something consistently. But so far he's been out to Lomita and McCoy and over to the tiny home villages. And this week they didn't make it out, but we are, planning something consistent. So, and they provide needle exchange and which is, useful in our area as well as the other street medicine services that are available to the participants. So it's super helpful, and we're super excited to be working with him. Any other questions?
If you have a question, I really can't see everybody. So if you have a question, just go ahead and ask. None? Thanks, you guys. That was informative.
Thank you.
Ronson, shall we move on to Sherry Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have Sherry Weaver, Harbor Interfaith Services, first slide.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'll start off by giving an update on our 3 interim housing sites. I am extremely happy to report that we are no longer under quarantine. It just seems like every year around this time we have these surges, and I'm happy to report that not only are we off quarantine, but we're able to get a number of the residents actually vaccinated as well. So for the San Pedro County interim housing site, we have currently 1 vacancy. We are at 23 permanent housing placements. We've had 3 of those in the past week with the emergency housing vouchers, and we have 3 more pending. So it's kind of nice to see that, we're able to actually use this resource and get some people moving along. At this particular site, we have 87% of the residents that are now fully vaccinated. San Pedro Bridge Home Site, we have 16 vacancies. That was our last site to go off quarantine. So we are quickly filling up the vacancies at this site. We have 20 permanent housing placements, and 67% of those residents are fully vaccinated. Redondo Beach Pallet Shelter, the home of no vacancies, still has no vacancies. We have 23 permanent housing placements out of that site. All total for all 3 interim housing sites, we've had 66 people that have ended their homelessness. And then for the coordinated entry system by system population, starting off with individuals, we've had another 173 individuals assessed during this period. We've had 45 that have been permanently placed through rapid rehousing and recovery rehousing. We've had another 31 through outreach housing navigation that have been placed, another 13 that have been placed through the housing navigation that's being funded by the city of Torrance, and then another 6 through city of Redondo Beach. For the transitional age youth, we've had another 11 youth assessed. We are starting to increase our enrollments. We've just had another 3 youth that were housed just last week alone. We're up to 12 total. And under prevention, it just seems like youth don't fall into homelessness in that way where they fall behind or they're becoming imminently at risk. So we haven't had any prevention cases this year, which actually is a good sign. And then last but not least, for our family system, we had 148 households assessed. 63 have been permanently housed through the rapid rehousing program, and another 13 were able to maintain their housing through prevention. One thing I'd like to add too is that we also are working now with the Long Beach Continuum, specifically with their Housing Authority. Long Beach COC does not provide services to homeless families, so we are providing services there. We were able to get 100 EHV vouchers for the families that are homeless in Long Beach, and so far 49 of them have actually gotten a voucher in their hands. So working diligently to get, end homelessness that way. But all the permanent housing placements for individuals, youth, and family is 167 year to date. And that's always a good note that we've ended homelessness for that many households. Success story for this month actually just took place yesterday. Danny, who was in one of our interim housing sites, he had been homeless in San Pedro for 8 years. And we're running into this a lot where we have adult family members that come from the same family. So it was his sister who we actually housed 5 years ago, and she's remained permanently housed, and his brother. And unfortunately, his brother just passed away 2 years ago and actually died in Danny's arms in an encampment. And that was that moment that Danny decided that he would come into interim housing. I know there was a lot of engagement and outreach to get him to that point, but being able to be there and provide that safety net when he needed it the most really was the thing that helped him to get to where he's at today. While he was at interim housing, we got him enrolled in general relief, got him access to healthcare services, enrolled in Department of Mental Health. He has a primary care physician. And although these accomplishments may not seem like they're lofty, it was what set the stage for him to become self-sufficient. We also were able to apply for an emergency housing voucher for him. And on January 25th, he officially got his lease and his keys. So we're really happy about that. And then just to add a little extra icing to the cake, we were able to get him a welcome home kit from one of our local churches. To say the least, they filled up our van and we were able to drop all of that off to him today. He was so excited about the pots and pans and the dishes and all the cooking he's going to do. And, I just kind of think of from the first time that we came in contact with Danny and to where he's at today, it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time, but, just to see these outcomes really makes it all worthwhile at the end of the day. And that's my report.
Great report. We're saving people one at a time, so that's a great news. Any questions for Sherry? Harbor Interface Services. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you, Sherry. Great report. Amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much. And to Path as well. Quick question. Can you remind me for these, the emergency housing vouchers that came through the ARP funds, the deadlines associated with placements for those? Can you I think there's some confusion about that.
Yeah, it's in 2023.
Okay.
2023, yeah. And we are actually getting to a point now where we call matching to this resource. Kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here. There may be people that may not be able to utilize their voucher, which would mean it would go back into the pot. But yeah, 2023 is the point we're trying to make.
January 1st or the end of 2023?
Courtney, do you remember the exact date in 2023?
September.
It's September. There you go.
Yeah, and Lori's going to be talking a bit more about it a little bit later after the next presentation.
Okay.
We have a number 6 that we'll be talking about vouchers. So hang on to that one. Okay. Anybody else?
I just wanted to, real quick, I forgot to give a shout out to Nancy Wilcox and the city of Gardena for the homeless count. It ran so smooth, and we always reach out to Nancy to see where the need is. We ended up in Gardena and it just ran so smooth. So thank you, Deanna, and the rest of the Gardena folks. It was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great night.
I'd like to add to that Nancy had, sorry, Nancy, if we're embarrassing you. She had 100% of the tracks in SPA 8 covered, and it was no easy feat. And I just want to say, if all the people here, how many of you participated in the homeless count? Okay, how many? I mean, it takes a village, but it takes leadership too. So kudos to Nancy. New technology, COVID, we couldn't make it more difficult for you, but she, along with the LASA team, did a fantastic job. So we're very appreciative.
So how did that, when you brought up the new technology, how did that new app work? Was it pretty easy for everybody? Because I know
For me, it was easy. I don't know, how about anybody else? Did anybody else have issues?
I thought it was really cool that, because like back in the old days, 2 years ago, you had the paper map and you have to make sure. So it was cool. I had a staff that had the paper map, but also we had the app, and it was good to just kind of match and make sure we didn't miss any spots. And that was really, really cool.
Yeah, it seemed to have gone pretty fast this time.
I really liked it too. I mean, the fact that we had the GPS tracking too that's built into that. I probably shouldn't tell you this since I was driving, but I kept following the blue dot on the map just to really kind of tell me where I'm at. But thank God I had a good co-pilot that kept me paying attention to the road. But it really helped us to stay within the boundaries of our census tract that we had. And I kind of like that feature. And the app itself actually was pretty smooth.
Oh, good. We'll see how the count comes out this year. Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, SCAMF. There's a little intro here. I think I'm going to read it just for everybody's sake. Is that okay, Ronson?
Yeah, and then after you do that, I can tee it up a little further, just really briefly.
Okay, great. So SCAMF's members have produced tens of thousands of apartments, condominiums, and houses throughout the region. These developments provide housing and services to people who have been homeless, disabled, elderly, veterans, the working poor, single-parent households, immigrants, low-income families, and low-income first-time home buyers. And so they're helping the economically disadvantaged individuals. And so go ahead, Ronson, and bring in some stuff.
Yeah, so just to tee up a little bit more, as you saw from Courtney's presentation with PATH, they hit upon a couple slides, more senior affordable housing, more affordable housing in general, especially with the emergency housing bachelors that are coming online. We see a real need for more housing, period. And so at the COG, one of the things we're looking into is a housing trust fund, but we're also always looking for more ideas. Good news, we have 4 Project Home Key projects that are in the works right now, so that's good. And so the next presenter will tell us how they're helping regions and cities build more affordable housing. And Alan, do you want to take it away? You can share. I believe you can share a screen, or if not, I can share my screen.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off, but really the first person. So we brought 3 staff people with us, so me and then 2 others. We have Jeanette Brown, our Senior Director of Programs and Engagement, and Ariana Jukes is our Program Associate. And so I think Jeanette, are you ready to, could you share your screen?
Yeah, Ronson, do you mind sharing your screen?
Sure.
Great.
There it is.
That's great. Thank you. Well, it's nice to be with you all. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you and tell you a bit about what SCAMF does, how we do it, and how we might be a resource and partner to you all on your local endeavors for affordable housing and homelessness. So next slide. So at the end of the day, SCAMF is a membership association. So our members are committed to building affordable housing, as Rodney said. Our core constituent are the nonprofit affordable housing developers who are building subsidized low-income housing or permanent supportive housing for homeless individuals. We've got about 2,200 members. They branch across a lot of different sectors, including jurisdictions and public agencies, the developers, the architects, the construction companies, anyone who's sort of involved in that development process is part of our network. We operate across 5 counties, LA, Orange, Ventura, Riverside, and San Bernardino. And our mission is really focused on facilitating development of affordable housing across our communities. Next slide. And if I had to boil down what SCAMP does in one key sentence, it's here. It's identifying, prioritizing, strategizing, and leading policy and programming efforts that are designed to create an environment conducive to affordable housing development. So we kind of boil that down to really building political will across this region, educating the industry so that their capacity to deliver is stronger, advocating to secure resources, and promoting favorable land use policies. And as our city partners like to remind us, they don't build housing, but SCAMP members do. And we see ourselves as partners to the public sector to help create conditions and policies that are favorable to development so that we can all chip away at this housing crisis we have. Next slide. This is a quick overview of just sort of the core activities that we do every year. You know, I'll just sort of emphasize that policy is the key aspect of what we do. We are an advocacy voice. We represent the affordable housing industry in political and policy contexts, and making sure that we're securing funding so that our members can build. Next slide. This is a quick overview of just sort of how we go about doing what we do. I'll emphasize that first bullet point is most important, and that we prioritize everything we do based on member input. We listen very closely to them to get a on-the-ground sense of what is happening, what are the barriers and challenges to development, what's holding up their projects. And that helps us shape our policy advocacy priorities and what we need to be advocating for every day. You know, we've put a strong emphasis on partnerships. Nothing we do alone. The strength of our advocacy voice is always stronger if we partner with others, and we derive our insights from people who are doing this work every day. I won't say too much else about that stuff. I'll move on to the next slide. This is just sort of a quick overview of examples of what we do. Again, that first bullet point I think is important because while there's other organizations that advocate for resources for affordable housing, SCAMP uniquely plays a role in focusing on making sure that when funding is secured, that it's implemented efficiently and expediently. So we spend a lot of time focused on regulatory advocacy so that funding is implemented the right way. You know, some other examples of what we're regularly doing, you know, we go visit with city council members and visits with assembly members. We bring affordable housing developers to those meetings to talk about what's in your district. What are the holdups of what's happening right now? We issue tons of comment letters to regulatory bodies every year, an average of 50. We sponsor legislation, we run campaigns for funding. We train residents that live in our buildings, the member buildings, to vote, to participate in civic engagement activities. So that's a quick rundown. Next slide. And Ariana?
Thanks, Jeanette. So a big part of what we do as well here is provide educational programming. So this can come in a variety of forms. It's mentorship programs, it's forums with elected officials, workshops on relevant topics. So for example, last week, excuse me, we had a workshop on redlining and land reparations, and the former mayor of Manhattan Beach, Mitch Ward, came and spoke about the policy behind Bruce's Beach and what that process was like. So we are trying to make sure that our members are constantly engaged and learning from one another as well as from folks around the Southern California area. Our big baby though, our big bread and butter is the conference that we hold each year. So this is the largest affordable housing conference in the region. And it's a fantastic way for our members to connect with one another, to learn from one another, to meet like-minded folks and really brainstorm about ways to move forward during this affordable housing crisis. I think last year we held about 35 events with over 4,000 folks in attendance, and that was all online. So we're excited to see how this year pans out with moving to in-person events. Next slide. So one program that I wanted to tell you all about is the California Affordable Housing Leadership Institute. So this is a affordable housing 101 training session that's geared towards staff of elected officials, public sector workers, community members. And we want to make sure that this is something that you all have on your radar, because we want to invite you to come and get a brief 2-hour but in-depth rundown on how affordable housing works and how the financing works for it. So you're going to get these slides afterwards, and there's a Zoom link to register for the event. It's on May 19th at 10 a.m. And with that, I'm going to pass it to the next slide, and I believe this is Alan.
Terrific. Thanks, Ariana. So, as Jeanette has kind of hinted on in the first few screens, and then discussion around the conference and other programmatic activities kind of suggest, we believe that we are placed in the middle of a kind of a unique place in the whole ecosystem. And so that as a result, we provide a unique value proposition to local governments. And the reason is because we engage the whole spectrum of the affordable housing ecosystem. So we can provide, firsthand accounts and insights and descriptions from affordable housing developers and others in the field. And we've been working with the public sector for a long time, and we'll describe some of those in detail later on in the program. We also believe that a really important element that we bring is connected to that access to developers. It's really the implementer's point of view. And that's important because if anybody is engaged in the business of trying to figure out how to intervene in the marketplace so that housing affordability is possible, then it's important to understand the physical nature of what a development needs to look like, and then also the financial nature of what a development needs to look like, so that it not only stands up for an enduring amount of time, but it also is fiscally viable for a significant amount of time. And I think we're ready for the next screen. And Jeanette.
Yeah, we just wanted to talk about a couple of different ways where we might be a resource and when you can call on us for things that might be helpful. So one, if you are looking to meet with affordable housing developers, build those connections, we can help facilitate those introductions. We've often been asked by jurisdictions for feedback on the design of a policy that you're looking to implement or an RFP that you're creating, if you want that implementer point of view from an affordable housing developer. And we're always happy to make those arrangements. Like as Ariana mentioned, we do lots of events throughout the year, and those are welcome. Anyone is welcome to attend those, and they're open to the public. So we encourage you to sign up for our communications if you want to attend those or learn about the policies that we are advocating for and the current campaigns we're undertaking right now. Our YouTube channel also has at least 50 videos of past workshops we've done on affordable housing topics concerning all kinds of different topical issues and policies that are relevant. And, as we said, we're a membership association, so our network is large and we draw on it regularly for expertise. And if you're looking for somebody who is an expert on a technical policy issue or some kind of research component, chances are we can probably find someone that's helpful to you. Next slide.
All right, thank you. Again, as it has been suggested, we are, a thought partner and advisor. We can work really closely with cities and advocates and public agencies, and we describe some of those interventions that we performed over time. So you'll see there, we'll make sure that we have the contact. Actually, the contact information is at the very end of the slide, and then we'll Ronson at the very end of the presentation, and then Ronson can make it available. But back up to slide 11, we have a number of examples of things that we've done in the past and that are currently happening right now. So for example, about 18 months ago, the Archdiocese of LA came to us and said, gosh, we've got land and we've got money, and we recognize that homelessness in particular is something that is, can you say, aligned with our mission, aligned with the values of the church. And so we walked them through a process to understand the range of possibilities as it relates to using those resources that they have. Jeanette worked very closely with the State Treasurer's Office and the California Office School Finance Authority to investigate the concept of creating housing opportunities for low-income students of community colleges. It was really triggered by an investigation and some research that indicated that the percentage of homeless students in the community college system was gigantic. We are currently operating as a contractor for the Southern California Association of Governments to oversee some of the work that's happening, funded with the Regional Early Action Planning Program. We have been engaged with the County of San Bernardino for the last 14 months or so to provide training and technical assistance for cities in the county as they look at affordable housing as a broad topic, and we're helping deepening their expertise there. You can see there that we've worked with the couple of cities, Rancho Cucamonga and Long Beach, to investigate the idea of inclusionary housing policies, working with the city of LA to across the city family, look at regulatory barriers to housing approval and affordable housing entitlement processes. And that includes not only the political agencies, the mayor's office and others, but also the Department of City Planning, Department of Water and Power. So there's some of those other departments that are integral to housing development. And then finally, just want to share with you something that we've been doing now for about 3 years. So it's one of those things where we came up with an idea. We suggested to do it for 2 quarters in a year, and 3 years later, we're still doing it every single quarter, where we convene the City of Los Angeles and the County of Los Angeles housing and homelessness agencies for a discussion around their work over the last 90 days. And it's really an effort to facilitate transparency, to foster better communications between agencies, and to explore efficiencies. And as I said, they keep asking us to reconvene that meeting. So we're excited and happy to do that. The next slide, please. Certainly many of the folks on this line, on this meeting today, understand that there's a connection between homelessness and housing affordability. It's no secret that during this most recent housing element process that the regional housing needs assessment number is significant for communities in our region. And so the focus on housing development is really important. And then there's a few new bells and whistles associated with incentives and penalties associated with localities that don't meet those RHNA numbers. So there's an important look at production. One of the things, I think this idea that is noted there, that 70% of the households experiencing homelessness today are sort of new entrants into that marketplace. And one of the things that means is we need to make sure that we have adequate protections for those who are economically vulnerable, which includes things like tenant protections, making sure that people aren't being forced out of their homes for reasons that aren't necessarily their fault. And then the other key factor, obviously, is that we need to be building more. We heard a couple of times in the report outs that in the interim and the shelter spaces, you had people that were there, but there was no affordable housing as a place for them to go. And so in order to be able to make sure that we're building housing, we need to make sure that there's a consistent and steady source of funds to make sure that there are other land use processes in place that allow for expedited development. Ronson mentioned the concept of creating land trusts. There's a bunch of local interventions that can help make more supportive and affordable housing available. Next slide, please. I think, again, as I alluded to in the last slide and has been mentioned here today, homelessness really happens and housing happens along a continuum, and that we have this really important mismatch where a balanced system has somewhere around 5 units that are available for every shelter bed. In our region right now, that ratio is really about 1 to 1, which means that you end up with a congestion in the system. And so one of the ways to relieve that congestion is to make sure that we're building homes that are affordable, and so that those who are economically vulnerable have a place to live. And then housing with robust support services for those who are chronically homeless so that they can be successful. Jeanette, I think, is going to cover the next slide.
Yeah, this slide is really just to kind of highlight that rents continue to go up and supply is not increasing enough to address that. And this comes from the California Housing Partnership and a research and advocacy partner that we work with a lot. So that's just sort of laid that out. Next slide. And this slide is really just a key data point about the mismatch between supply and demand right now. You know, right now the median rent is nearly half of median income here in LA County, and it is typical that homelessness will get worse and increase if median rents exceed 22% of median income. So our crisis is bound to get worse if we don't provide enough supply. Next slide.
Yeah, so one of the ways to provide some of that supply that Jeanette's referencing is through supporting local measures. And one that we did support was Proposition HHH. I'm sure many of you have heard of this, but basically it passed in 2016, and it allows city officials to use up issue 1.2 billion in bonds for the development of permanent supportive housing. So the goal was to build 10,000 units by the year 2026. And by 2022, we were already at 8,000 units coming down the pipeline to ensure that our most vulnerable are off the streets. What's key to note about HHH funds is that it's a starting pot of money to really get nonprofit developers to leverage the funds to find other investments to build a unit. So an average HHH subsidy is about $130,000, which then allows developers to leverage another $400,000 to build a unit. So we're seeing a 1-to-4 ratio in terms of returns on the HHH fund. So it's a powerful use of public spending to build affordable housing. And with that, I'm going to actually pass it back to Jeanette.
Actually, before we move on to that, I just wanted, if I can interject there, I think that's a very important point because it's often forgotten, because we see the controller keep telling folks it's costing $600,000 to $800,000 per unit to build these units, but really we're only using $130,000 of public money, and the rest is being, the rest is either public or private, but they're coming from other sources. Is that right?
Yeah, that leverage, the leverage thing is really important, and it gets lost a lot. I mean, I don't want to dismiss that, when you start spending $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 on a unit of affordable housing, there definitely needs to be some accountability with respect to cost, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're doing things cost effectively as possible. But the leverage number is a really big deal. The second thing to remember is that these buildings essentially operate at a deficit, and they never are financially stronger than they are at the moment when they close all of their permanent financing. Because what happens is the rents that low-income people can pay actually don't cover the cost of operations and building. And so a lot of that upfront money is really about making sure that the building can stay affordable for 55 years. And then the last thing I'll say about the cost issue is that while we may balk at the idea, certainly should balk at the idea of $800,000 or $1 million for a unit. There's a UC Riverside report in 2020 that said that in the city of Los Angeles, a market rate unit cost $578,000. When on average, the HHH deals are coming in at about $558,000. So the development costs are comparable for both, but in one case, we're helping support the benefit of a developer, and in the other case, we're actually creating a public asset that will be privately held, but in the public interest for over a half a century.
And Alan touched on the point of this slide. It's just we like to remind folks that, you know, affordable housing, because it uses public subsidy dollars, is a public asset, and the covenants tied to those dollars ensure that the units stay affordable for the long haul. So often 30 to 55 years. So we always like to emphasize that these housing units are a public asset that serve the community for the long term. Next slide. I often get asked, you know, why do we need to subsidize affordable housing development? Why can't the private market just take care of it? And time again, it has shown that the private market rate developers, you know, they're not looking to build for these low-income households. And what these low-income people can afford to pay will not cover the development and operating costs of new housing development and the rents that they can demand. And private market rate developers tend to flip their properties after a couple of years for a quick profit, and our members, nonprofit developers, keep their properties in their portfolio for the long term. So we always emphasize that market interventions are necessary, and subsidized affordable housing fills that gap with what's not being provided by the private market. Next slide. This is just a sampling of what some of our member projects look like. This is a mix of both regular affordable housing and permanent supportive housing projects that are designed to look cohesive with neighborhoods and fit very nicely within the neighborhoods they are. This is all over LA County. Next slide.
All right, for those of you doing the countdown, we're at 20 of 25, so we're bringing it home here. You know, I think certainly we've tried to make the case that we have an understanding of the existing ecosystem. This slide is really just an effort to make sure that you guys understand that we are also forward-looking, and so we're following some of the really important evolution that's happening in housing development, and you'll see that it includes things around finance, public sector interventions, and building technologies. The next slide, please. Let's see. Yeah, this slide right here is talks about you know, ways that local jurisdictions can partner with nonprofit developers. So Ronson, you mentioned, for example, this idea of establishing a local trust fund. You know, money is always kind of a key market correction resource, but you'll also notice that we have identified other things that are not necessarily monetary. So the idea of inclusionary zoning ordinances, the connection between locations to important amenities like schools and transit development, which would then benefit not only the young people that live in those developments, but also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. We're going to talk, the next two slides, we're going to talk about a few of the public policy interventions that we're engaged in. One is a local measure in the city of Los Angeles. We call it United to House LA. The concept there is that we're going to, by petition, look to put an initiative on the ballot for November of 2022. And by doing such, we will be able to enter into the world where you can pass a funding measure with a 50% majority as opposed to a 2/3 majority. So we're engaged right now today in the work of getting the signatures sufficient to qualify the initiative for the ballot, and then we hope to run it in the fall. And you'll see there that it's a real estate transfer fee on both residential and commercial properties that are valued at in excess of $5 million. We expect that it'll raise about $8 billion, and it will fund homelessness prevention programs and affordable housing development. Next slide, please. This one you guys may have heard of. We call it the Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency. It's really shepherded mostly by the United Way. Greater Los Angeles, and it's in the legislative context of Sacramento right now in a bill called SB 679. The concept there is it creates a county-wide affordable housing agency that could do a few things. One is that it would be able to kind of collectively raise money across the county, but then it would also provide infrastructure capacity for local governments. So it could come in the form of staffing support for localities, technical assistance and training for local housing departments, and then again through those funds raised could provide a local resource that would provide, in some cases, that local leverage capacity to allow to attract other dollars. This is not for sure yet, but there's some discussions on those last couple of items there that the idea that the agency might have some capacity to exercise land use powers across the region, and maybe have some Environmental Quality Act authority also. And then I think we got two more. So the next slide. Yeah, we outlined some things here that talk about what local jurisdictions might want to do if they want to partner with developers. A lot of these have to do with land use and creating sort of additional space, if you will, to be able to build. And certainly those of you who've engaged in the housing element work over the last recent period understand the importance of site identification and proper zoning to be able to build stuff. And I think with that, I'll give it back to Jeanette, and we will be done. Ready for questions.
Yeah, I think that's it for now. And we linked to a couple things. I think Ariana put it in the chat, just how to find our newsletter sign up and workshop recordings. But our emails are right there if you'd like to contact us.
Okay, that was a great presentation. We really appreciate that you guys have come to introduce this to us. And I'm sure with all the people that are signed on, Ron, so we probably have a lot of questions. So we'll just go ahead, raise your hand and fire away. Is that good?
Yeah, I do have a lot of questions, but I wanted to give other folks a chance just in case to go first.
Let's see, I don't see any hands right now. No, I don't see any hands. So I guess it's yours.
Okay, great. Well, thanks guys. Great presentation. One of the main things that our cities care about or are worried about is the RHNA numbers. And I know on some of your slides there are ways for cities to kind of think about affordable housing and how they can bring more of it in their areas. Do you guys offer like a city program or like a playbook on how cities can have more of their RHNA numbers met through affordable housing development versus say market rate development?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts about that. One is that, so the short answer is I don't have the playbook. The slightly longer answer is we actually do now have the staff capacity to have a conversation about a playbook. I expect that the way it would work for us now is we would work with we could, for example, work with individual localities and explore a range of interventions. And then we would sort of retain those learnings and sort of localize them and then have them as a library of things that are available. So for example, that inclusionary policy that we did for Rancho and for Long Beach, we have good materials there, and there are a range of other kinds of intervention subject matter expertise that we have, but we don't have like the one playbook.
Yeah, that'd be great because I know in our cities there seems to be a lot of hesitancy for more market rate housing. We have a lot of opposition to SB 9, for example. And so having an affordable housing component or having affordable housing make up the majority of new development might be more palatable for our cities. On that note, when we're talking about the housing trust fund, one of the hangups is that if we say invest money collectively in an area, let's just make it like say Hawthorne, you know, that build out isn't helping other regions meet their RENA numbers. And I know there's been some legislation about sharing, I guess the housing build out regionally, but it seemed to have died. Do you have any perspective on that, or if that's still being discussed?
My impression is, I think we got two issues that are happening out in the world. One is the idea of sharing regional housing needs allocations. My understanding was not very well received in the legislature. And so I don't think that there's any active discussion right now about a bill like that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what is it, 196 jurisdictions in the SCAG region with something like 6 who got their housing elements approved. I mean, there's clearly a lot of room for improvement. And in this case, I actually don't mean from the localities, but I mean within kind of the system, right? The imposition in the 6th cycle is pretty extraordinary. And I think we're just going to go through this kind of frothy time while the whole thing gets kind of sorted out. But I do think that, more rigorous and significant with incentives and penalties RENA world is where we are. And I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Okay. And then you also mentioned working with the archdiocese. That's kind of interesting because we have a lot of cities, obviously with like a big faith community. One in Hermosa Beach, I don't know if Angela's still on, but they were recently approached by one of their main churches about using their land for homeless housing. And I know there's a lot of developers that specialize in that. Clifford Beers comes to mind, where they take church property. And so churches are for those who don't know, churches are the biggest landowners in Los Angeles. And so they have a lot of land. And so the idea is that they can use some of that land to build housing. And one, cities get RENA credit for it, right? I would assume. And then two, it's actually a possible return on just additional funds going to the church as well, through rents and things like that. So it's sort of a win-win situation. And so I just was wondering if you have developers you can recommend to Hermosa and other cities on here that might be interested in engaging with their faith-based communities to use their land for that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, so we have, a decent scores of affordable housing, nonprofit affordable housing development organizations that build in the region. And so the referral is easy. I think the harder part, though, quite frankly, is for the house of worship to be walked through a process where they get to think about what they actually want to accomplish with the property. Because it has been my experience in these conversations that those goals vary significantly, not only across individual churches or synagogues or mosques, but also even within the context of an individual house of worship. And so oftentimes churches will come to us, churches broadly defined will come to us and say, hey, we think we should build affordable housing on our property. And then when you get into the conversation, you realize that there's actually a lot of different ideas within just that one church about what might happen. Should it be a revenue generator? Should it be something that's strictly, the poorest of the poor? How much of the land are we talking about? There's a lot of considerations that oftentimes have not been sort of fully vetted. And so we can help in that discussion. There are also other groups or national organizations that have set up sort of capacity internally to walk through those processes. The other thing I'll say is there's a piece of legislation in Sacramento sponsored by the chair of the Senate Housing Committee, Scott Weiner, that really allows for a by right approval process for affordable housing on church land. That bill right now is run into the obstacle that all housing legislation has run into in Sacramento, and that is the impasse with the California Building Trades Council. And I'll just say that while Sacramento has spent the last 18 months at an impasse with the labor trades, we've been able to negotiate at least labor peace associated with that City of LA measure. And so we have strong relationships with the Building Trades Council here. And I think that things are slightly more optimistic here than they are in Sacramento right now.
Great, great. I think we're running out of time. Just one last question. You know, the transfer tax, I believe, is an LA City initiative, right? Most of the cities here are county based. Do you know if there's any percolation of that idea onto the county level?
So the SB 679, as I mentioned, the La Casa, the statewide agency would have, which is not the right word, fundraising capacity. It would have authority to levy taxes and things like that. I think that the goal for that legislation is to establish the agency this year, so 2022, and then look at some sort of funding mechanism in the next even election, the 2024 election. And sort of what that looks like, I can't tell you because we don't know yet.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have. Very helpful.
Thanks, Ronson. So during this additional conversation with Ronson's questions, does anybody else have any thoughts or questions that they want to throw out? Okay, so thanks again for the presentation. And we know that this has already been, Lori, this has been posted already in the COG's website and everything. So, I believe some of the information was put in the chat. So go to the chat if you want some of the extra stuff, okay? And so we'll move on to income, housing, subsidies, matrix. Ronson, it's all yours.
Yeah, great, thanks. Actually, as a better segue from the conversation we just had, I wanted to actually switch positions with Lori, because Lori has a great presentation on housing vouchers and kind of facts versus myths. So Lori, you want to take it away?
Sure, Ronson. I'll start my great presentation. Flattery gets you everywhere.
Thanks, Lori.
So thank you. Yeah, I'm still digesting that presentation we just saw. There was a lot to unpack there. So we'll look at that. So Ronson, you're going to share the screen?
Yeah, give me 1 second. Unless you have it up, feel free to go ahead and share.
I'm having some issues if I have too many things open. I already got kicked out once. So if you could do it, that would be great. So we're going to talk about emergency housing vouchers. And I want to preface this by saying, I do not profess to be an expert at this. I'm not sure who could be an expert at this because it changes so rapidly. I just try to go to as many meetings as possible and see what the latest and greatest is. So that's my caveat to cover myself. Did you find it, Ronson?
I did.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So now that I've put that disclaimer here, and please, especially the service providers who work with these vouchers all the time, take note. When we get to the end, send me, we can discuss any corrections or different perspective on these. So basically, we want to advocate for people with vouchers. Bottom line, the emergency housing vouchers, it's an incredible program, but the county got like 6,800 of them. They're finally starting to get matched up, and lo and behold, there is a huge shortage of units to rent. And there's a lot of stigma still associated when you say things like Section 8 or housing vouchers with landlords. And so what I'm going to talk about is what some of these barriers are, and look to you, and especially my city electeds here. What can we do to get the word out to more landlords so they understand what benefits there are to this and how they're helping the situation with getting people housed? In the statistic, for every 100 families needing housing, there's only 24 units available. I think that says quite a bit. So we're going to talk about how we can collaborate to sourcing more units to get rented out through these. Next slide. Okay, just very brief background. Most of the people on this call are familiar with the vouchers. So the emergency housing vouchers came through with the American Rescue Plan. There are 6,806 are out there. And there's also Section 8 housing choice vouchers. Those have a long waiting list. The emergency housing vouchers are right away. And I think Sherry, or I think it was Sherry touched on it, that a housing voucher can get matched up, but if we, or get issued, but if we don't match it to a unit in enough time, it becomes void and it goes back into the pile. We don't want that to happen. Next slide. So this is just looking at some numbers. So LAHSA has a dashboard that shows the numbers on the emergency housing vouchers. And so we have 6 housing authorities that this group deals with in SPA 8. And here I'm showing how many awards were issued, how many actual issuances, and the current vouchers leased. As you can see, we're not doing very well on getting those vouchers leased. And it does end in September 2023. I think it originally had an earlier ending date. And so that got extended. So this data is as of a few days ago. I don't really, so the County of LA and the City of LA have the very large housing authorities. And then we have the smaller housing authorities in Inglewood, Redondo, Torrance, and Hawthorne. And there's different type of incentive programs depending on which housing authority we're talking about. We'll get to that. Next slide. So what do the landlords want? You know, we have to figure out what the barriers are so we can get to the solutions. So they want very reasonable things. They want their rent to be paid on time, the property be respected, good tenants, and no damages. That none of those things are unreasonable. Okay. And I'm not sure that all of the landlords are aware of the incentive bonuses. So for instance, HACLA has a $2,500 signing bonus, and that's for each unit in their building. And then there's also some additional information on if they need repair work, there are some incentives there, and for security deposits. The smaller housing authorities are creating a little bit of their own incentives. So you would need to work with each housing authority to know what specific incentives they offer. Next slide. So Ronson asked me to put together as an education tool a myth versus the facts, and this is really geared towards the landlords. So the myth that Section 8 tenants are problems, they're unemployed, and they don't want to work. And you'll find some of these myths follow along with the same myths that people have about homelessness too. So there's bad tenants in all kinds of sizes, okay? It has nothing to do with the housing vouchers. And Ronson found a statistic that most Section 8 tenants end up staying in the same place for a very long period of time. So what's important is the screening process, and the vouchers, the people are vetted, they come through the CES system. And so it might be that you have more reliable tenants going through this process than just renting through any other process. Next slide. Okay, the landlord's responsible for a lot of paperwork. So they're thinking, I don't want to do this. It's going to be so hard. There's so much paperwork. So I'm told, and I haven't done this myself, so I'm passing this on, that initially they have to fill out some basic paperwork, the tenancy approval form, W-9, a lead warning statement, and a lease agreement. They're kind of standard stuff, but it's not that overwhelming. Next myth. Landlords cannot evict a housing voucher tenant. I've heard that many times. Okay, so any tenant, if they violate something in the lease agreement, eviction actions can be put into place. It's regardless whether they have a housing voucher or they don't. Okay, if a landlord wants to try and evict somebody without stating the cause, they have to give them a 90-day written notice. As you know, right now, we still have an eviction moratorium. So that's a different subject. But basically, when you look at evictions, more episodes of homelessness actually start with the eviction process. That's how people end up out without having housing. And I quoted here where we got that statistic. Next slide, next myth. The housing authority have very tough inspection requirements. They have normal inspection requirements to not have a slumlord. Okay, these are all items that landlords would want to do. Okay, nothing is like extra more difficult. Smoke detectors, water heaters, appliances, exit, window and door locks. These are all standard things that any apartment building would have to pass. And the housing authority are the ones that arrange for the inspections. So this is not a true fact. Next myth. Landlords do not have to accept a housing voucher for rent. It is absolutely illegal for a landlord to turn down a tenant because they have a voucher. Having said that, if a landlord really doesn't want this to happen, they come up with loopholes in trying to avoid this. That's not okay. But rather than going after landlords saying, hey, that's illegal, you can't do that, let's educate them, show them what the benefits are, and make them realize this might be a good option for them, plus the incentive bonus. So, okay, we're on to the next myth. Ronson pushed me around.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Rental costs, I'm talking as fast as I can, Ronson.
Don't mean to rush you.
Okay. Rental costs for housing vouchers are preset and are controlled by the housing authority. So while they are set by the housing authority based on algorithms, the rental costs are negotiable up to a certain amount. There's a max. So people need to understand that it's not set in stone. They can talk, and the landlords and the tenants can work with the housing authority, okay, to determine or to come up with a rent that makes sense for them. Next myth. Payments from the housing authority can stop without warning. As a rule, that doesn't happen. The housing vouchers are very reliable for payment. Okay, now, if for some reason a landlord experiences any problem, they have a relationship now with the housing authority who issued or the service provider, whoever issued the voucher payment, and just go right to the housing authority to find out what the problem is. But this is not a common occurrence at all. Next, the rent will not be paid on time. Okay, so not true for the portion of the rent that's covered by the voucher. Okay, this is a very reliable and one of the benefits of it. Now, the tenant has a portion they need to pay, and usually it's 30% of their income. And a tenant is not going to want to lose this voucher. They're going to want to keep this great opportunity that they have. If for some reason the tenant is late on their portion, the landlord can go right to the voucher administrator, who will follow up, because the tenant is going to want to rectify the situation. They do not want to lose this benefit. Next. Housing vouchers can only be issued to clients in the city where they are unhoused. That is not true. There is some housing vouchers can be used across certain jurisdictions, and you just need to work with the specific housing authority to find out where they can. Because somebody might say, hey, I don't want to, I'm here in Redondo Beach and I don't want to go to Carson or wherever the situation is. There are ways to work within the county to, there's portability for the housing vouchers. I'll say that. Next. Credit scores are a good barometer for tenants' ability to pay rent. No, credit scores shouldn't even be an issue here, but we're finding from the research Ronson and I have done that a good chunk of the landlords are insisting that tenants have between at least a 620 and a 650 credit rating. And inherently, these are people with low income that don't have that high of a credit rating. Now, if 70% of the rent is paid by a voucher and the tenant is very motivated to pay that other 30% to keep the voucher, this shouldn't be an issue. But one of the things we found out is if the landlord runs a credit report, the past rental payments is not part of that reporting. And we are looking into, apparently there are some organizations that can provide that information on past rental payment. So we're looking into that. And then there's the idea that credit scores are really racially biased. And you can see the statistics right there. Okay, 1 in 5 Black people have credit scores below 620, 1 in 9 Hispanic have below 620, and 1 in 19. So that creates right there racial bias that and obviously this is something that we really need to pay attention to get people on an even playing field. Next. So some additional barriers that aren't necessarily myths. Quite often somebody who's looking for housing, they have a pet. That's a family member. And to tell them that they have to get rid of their pet to use their voucher is very traumatizing. Slow security deposit payments. This is a biggie. And I think Ronson's going to talk about this in his session. So look, a landlord's going to rent to the person who comes up with the money first. That's just a fact. So we're looking at ways that we can improve the process for the security deposit payments to get issued. Apparently, when the vouchers are matched up, the security deposit doesn't come right away to the landlord, and so they might rent to somebody else. So again, I'm going to let Ronson talk about ways we're going to address that. Okay, and then also another requirement sometimes on these is the tenant has to have their own refrigerator and an oven and stove, and it's a requirement on the lease. And so we're looking at ways such as problem-solving funds, which give an opportunity to get to pay for furniture and appliances and the security deposits. And the problem-solving assistance fund is really a limited financial program that's managed by LASA to help participants with these particular issues to speed up the process. And then Ronson's going to talk about sort of the updated client aid. So after you've done all your research of different ways that you can get assistance, the problem-solving funds and other programs and subsidies you have, then client aid might be a source where we could help you out on that. Next. So I say this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for vouchers. 6,806 vouchers for the LA County. That's enormous. What a shame if we don't use all of them. So we want 100% of these leased up. Okay, there's an 8-year waiting list for the housing choice vouchers. There's no waiting list other than pushing these through the process. Path Lease Up is another resource for these. So basically, we're looking to all of you to be advocates for people with vouchers by helping us to work through all of these barriers that we've identified, change the messaging to the landlords so they understand this is a benefit, and get the community involved to want to promote this too. You know, even though we have a lot of NIMBYs out there, nobody wants to continue to see the homeless crisis that we're having to deal with. And so we look to you for ideas and to collaborate together. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Lori. Appreciate all that. A lot to absorb. We are kind of running a little bit long, so we'll take a couple of questions if you have any right now for Lori. Otherwise, you can hang on for the next one, and I'm sure Ronson will have some questions for you also. Okay.
Roberto?
Yes, Roberto, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Lori did a great job, but she missed one important fact. Section 8 landlord payments are COVID proof. So during the pandemic, those payments continued to roll in. So no landlord was left without a rent payment, which is not the same for the regular market rate tenants. So, but you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberto. I'm adding that point.
That's a huge one.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Hi, Kim back from Hawthorne.
Go ahead.
Lori, I just wanted to correct your PowerPoint. Hawthorne was only issued 67 vouchers. I think you had 134 on there.
I got those statistics from the EHV dashboard on LASA.
Okay.
So,
I can confirm that we asked for more, but they only gave us 67.
well, that's what they're reporting. So that's interesting to know, Kimberly.
We'll check with LASA as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Ronson, go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Lori. That was very informative and good job, good work putting that together. I know it was a lot of work. Just on this note, we're talking about housing today, and one of the main causes of homelessness is evictions. Actually, Gary Blasi from UCLA is stating that 60% of all homelessness starts with an eviction, and that seems kind of high to me. But if you think about it, that's kind of true. You could be evicted from an apartment, or you could be maybe kicked out of your house. If you're, say, living with your mom. We've all seen that happen. And so what I wanted to talk about today, eviction moratoriums were in place. I think there was a brief reprieve back in October. From my understanding, April 1st, they're gonna put back the moratoriums in full force. But evictions continue to be a problem. We continue to hear from our electeds, from people calling into city halls that they're being evicted and what can they do about it. And so I wanted to share some information with you all that I think is very powerful. This is a new tool I just found out about, and we really need to tell a lot of people about it. But it's a way for people to prevent being evicted. And so this is Gary Blasi's slide from UCLA. What happens in an eviction is this. A landlord will serve an eviction notice to the tenant. The tenant needs to file an answer with the courts within 5 business days. If they do not do that one simple filing, then they will be evicted in about 2 weeks. If they do file within 5 business days, then that kind of delays the process to like an additional 20 days. What oftentimes happens is tenants don't know about that. They're underrepresented. 95% of landlords have lawyers, 9% of tenants that do not have lawyers. And so the statistic for tenants without lawyers winning eviction cases in LA County, that statistic is 0. There literally isn't any instance where a tenant can win an eviction case if they do not have lawyers. But if they have a lawyer, that changes dramatically. And so what UCLA did was they built this tenant-powered toolkit. And it's a tool where it actually helps you respond to an eviction notice within that 5 business days. So you can just go on here at tenantpoweredtoolkit.org, and you can start your defense. And by doing this, it'll walk you through it. It's in English and Spanish. And so I know a lot of you have Spanish client loads. You can do this in Spanish as well, and you can go ahead and start the filing process. But again, this delays that eviction for another 20 days while there's other resources available to connect you with legal aid to fight that eviction. So we're going to share this as well through our website, but or through the site of the agenda. And so wanted to share this tool and hope we spread the word about this. But this can be a very powerful tool to stop evictions and prevent homelessness. The other thing I wanted to discuss with you all, and feel free to interject too, I always like it when it's more of a discussion, is we had a Coral fellow, Marco, recently, and he developed an income subsidy. I believe in our last task force meeting, we had talked about different subsidies. We had that Salvation Army presentation on Street 2 subsidy. And these subsidies, all these different subsidies can be very confusing as to who qualifies for what, who doesn't qualify for this and that. And so we had our fellow kind of straighten it out for us. And it's a little bit work in progress, but I wanted to preview this so that you all know that we're kind of building this, and hopefully we can share the finalized format soon. We may even turn this into an app so people can download and find all the different subsidies that their clients may cover for. But the idea is that you can go in here, press a button, it'll take you to all the different housing subsidies that are available, from like home safe to rapid rehousing to general relief. Housing is key. And it has descriptions of everything, eligibility requirements, disqualifications, what the demographics are for, and and then more details about the program and so forth. So he was able to accumulate a lot of information. So this is the housing kind of tab. And then we have like income subsidies, Social Security, TANF. We also have service assistance subsidies like WIC, food stamps, IHSS, Medicare, Medi-Cal, things like that. So looking to share this in more detail in the future, so keep an eye out on that. I know we're running a little bit late on time. I wanted to also talk about client aid. And we're kind of in the final process of it. I'm hoping to start that soon, but still working with the banks to kind of on the logistics of rolling out Client Aid 2.0. It's going to be an extension of Client Aid 1.0. Client Aid 1.0 was very successful, in my opinion. We started that in July 2021. We had 13 total people that we helped. And out of the 13, 11 eventually got housing or are in the process to get housing with a voucher. So that was a great result. We had one person that came in through Hawthorne. He wanted to get a shelter. This is the last week in December where it was raining really, really badly. And he wanted to get into a weather activated shelter, but it was all full. So we put him up in a motel, and subsequently he got COVID right after that. He tested positive. So fortunately, we were able to put him in a motel, and he was able to recover from COVID. And once we got out, he had a voucher in hand, and we were able to get him housing shortly thereafter. So it was great to see a program like that help someone in that situation. We've helped families through the program, and so we're looking to do more with Client Aid, including kind of backfilling areas where problem solving isn't able to react fast enough or doesn't cover. So things like transportation costs, security deposits, like Lori mentioned, furniture, welcome kits, things like that. So be on the lookout for that, more of that to come. Let's see, what else am I missing? I think that's about it in terms of my updates. Ronnie?
The Blue Ribbon? How about Blue Ribbon?
Oh yeah, Blue Ribbon. Yeah, let me share that as well. So Blue Ribbon Commission, not sure if you all were able to join the meeting this morning, but they're getting to the point where they need to start wrapping things up and need to start formulating their recommendations into something a little bit concrete that they can vote on. And so what I did with the San Gabriel Valley COG and also the Gateway COG, and we actually just had a conversation just now with Westside COG, me and Jackie. We talked about like our notes and what it's all kind of boiling down to. So a couple of major themes that's coming about is that there needs to be a shot caller. So right now, both the county and city, there isn't an identified shot caller. There's some confusion about that because some of us thought like maybe CEO HI was the shot caller, but apparently they're not. And so there's this recognition that there needs to be a shot caller board. And maybe that shot caller board is a consolidation of a lot of different boards, the CES board, the COC board, RAC, the Loss of Commission maybe, potentially, into one board that can call the shots and be the decision maker. One of the things we're really pushing for from the COGS and city is to have 5 seats on this board from all the different regions. The total would maybe be 10 to 15 seats. And so that is one thing. The second thing is spinning off CEO HI homeless initiatives from the county CEO office into its own department. That way it can be more effective. And they would basically provide recommendations to the shot caller board. They would distill the 50+ strategies down to like 5 to 8 system-wide goals so that they're more easier to understand and comprehend. And so yeah, there's this movement in the Birch Commission to form this kind of new entity that would function in this way. One of the things also that's been attractive to the commission is the idea of working groups. They got this idea from Houston, the city of Houston, where they have 5 to 6 working groups working on the issues, their housing acquisition. So In Houston, from the moment they talk to an outreach worker to the time they get housed is 60 days, if you can believe that. That's amazing. You know, I'm sure the things on the ground in Houston is probably different. They probably have a lower, you know, we probably have a much lower rental occupancy rate than Houston, but still, I mean, for them to house someone in 60 days from first contact to housing is crazy. And so they have a housing acquisition group that specializes in getting housing ready for their homelessness clients. And so that's one working group. Another working group they have is in mental health care and substance abuse, encampments and outreach, jail reentry prevention. And we added one data sharing. One of the big themes is that, you know, cities are not getting the data they need to help their constituents. And so we're really big on getting the data. There's HMIS data, and there's also CHIP data, which is the higher acuity data that we would like to see. That's basically it in a nutshell. So that's kind of where we're at with Birch. We're thinking about sending, this is kind of, I'm calling this like our whiteboard, and we're thinking about sending this to the committee to see if they would like to use it or consider it, but that's kind of where we're at.
So is there another roundtable meeting on the 9th?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot to mention there is a roundtable meeting on the 9th where the cities and COGs will kind of participate in the Birch Commission, and they would kind of provide some feedback and some comments as to the direction they'd like to see this all going. And so I know Councilmember Tanaka, you were interested in speaking in that, and I believe a couple more from our cities will be participating.
Okay. Okay, so if you have any questions, just throw them out right now to Ronson. Even if you have a few questions about the previous discussions on like the vouchers and the aid and things like that. So anybody have a question? No, I don't see any hands. Okay, so you can always reach out to Lori, to Ronson, if you kind of come up with questions. So you can always reach out to them at the COG. They'll be more than glad to help you out. So with that, we're just going to move on to legislative updates. Jackie, we have any of those? I see Janice
Unmuted.
waving.
I was muted. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't think you want to talk to us anymore.
No, I was here. I just couldn't get time. I unmute. No, we've got Janet here. So from legislation.
Yes, she's waving her hand. I saw her. Go ahead, Janet.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to tell you about what's in the works. Congressman Liu joined Senator Padilla in introducing the Housing for All Act. And if whoever was at the recent overall COG meeting, I apologize that you probably heard this already, but I'm hoping there's a lot of other people who weren't there. Some of the important provisions of this bill is that it addresses affordable housing shortage by investing in the National Housing Trust Fund, the Home Investment Partnership Program, Section 202 Supportive Housing for the Elderly Program. Love seeing that they have a special carve out for elderly, and also Section 811 Supportive Housing for people with disabilities, which is really, really important too. It also addresses the homelessness crisis by investing in housing choice vouchers, project-based rental assistance, emergency solutions grant program. That's for rapid rehousing, outreach, emergency shelters, homelessness prevention, and continuum of care. And another major point is that it provides supporting innovative, locally developed approaches to the crisis by investing in hotel, motel conversions to permanent supportive housing, investing in the eviction protection grant program, investing in mobile crisis intervention teams, as you heard about the Venice Family Clinics, which is incredibly successful. And those are just a few of the highlights. This bill just got introduced on February 25th. We're very excited about it. It will bring billions of dollars of federal money to solving homelessness. So keep your fingers crossed. We get this one through.
Good. Thank you, Janet. Any questions for Janet? Okay. Any other legislative stuff, Jackie?
I think we have someone from Assemblyman Marisucci's office here. Do you have anything you want to add? Any of the assembly members or senators? I don't know if they had to leave.
Because somebody from, let's see, Janice's office is here too.
Yes, hi, I'd be happy to give a quick update if
Hi,
you're
Jen.
interested. Hi again, everybody. Just wanted to quickly make sure everybody was aware this happened very quickly. I wasn't able to make your January meeting, but right before that meeting, the county's Citizens Redistricting Commission adopted a new set of supervisorial district boundaries. And Supervisor Hahn's district has changed significantly in the South Bay. She no longer represents the beach cities and El Segundo. And she has picked up a bunch of cities in the Southeast LA area, but she does still represent Torrance and Lomita, which I cover, as well as the 4 peninsula cities and the harbor area parts of the city of LA. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And then I just thought I'd give a quick update. So the supervisor's funding the Torrance Homeless Court pilot program. And we had a great meeting at the Torrance Courthouse last week with Judge Honeycutt and Judge Gilbertson, who is the same judge that administers the Redondo Beach Court. And we're aiming to have it start in May. I know that the service providers are looking at identifying potential cases that could go through the homeless court. And the setup will be that it will be virtual. The judge will be in the courtroom and the participant will be at the Ken Miller Recreation Center in Torrance, along with the service providers, and it will be done via WebEx. So I just wanted to let you know it's really moving along quite well, and we're looking forward to it starting. Also, I'm very happy that the supervisor is partnering with Torrance on the interim housing pallet shelter project as well, and those two will go hand in hand. And just wanted to provide those updates. And also, I just wanted to say very quickly, the LA County Development Authority's Homeless Incentive Program is an amazing program, and I believe you touched on it a little bit earlier, Lori. So the supervisor sponsoring the General Assembly, and we do have the ability to have an exhibit table. I think it was the last in-person General Assembly. We actually had that program highlighted at our table, and it was very well received. I'd be happy to invite them again to come and provide information at the General Assembly if that sounds something that would be of interest.
Sure, you can reach out to Jackie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you. So do we have anybody else that has legislative stuff from their representatives? Anybody? I don't see any hands. Okay, Jackie, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, the biggest thing on our agenda, besides solving all the world's problems, is our General Assembly. And it's coming up on March 24th, which this is March, which is a little scary. And we start at 8, it's free. It's Carson Community Center. It's a day where we're going to be getting together, actually, being together. It's in person. We're starting with a registration and exhibits, and we'll have our regular exhibit hall with a lot of really interesting kinds of exhibits, and hopefully there'll be information on some of the issues that you're interested in this group as well. The panel, the program this year was put together by our chair, Drew Boyles, and he himself is an entrepreneur, and he has invited some other entrepreneurs to come and speak. We're having someone from Charge Fuse who's going to talk about portable chargers, someone from Wavemaker Labs, and I can tell you more about them as I learn more. Boomerang, which is another firm that has all kinds of innovative projects that they've started, and a representative of Starburst Accelerator. That's all on our panel 1. And that's a panel that's called Community of Innovation. All of these are startups that have created some lasting great ideas. Our second panel is a glimpse into the future, aerospace and defense, and we're going to talk about the federal-local intersection. We've got Ben Marcus from Up Ventures, who does drone kinds of things. Colonel Krolikowski, who is the colonel of the LA Air Force Base, will be on the panel. Someone from Slingshot Aerospace, ABL Space Systems, and Relativity Space. So they'll tell you about these firms that are mostly from El Segundo, but also how they affect the South Bay and what cities should be looking for. Then we're going to have lunch. And at lunch, we're going to be talking about our year in review, what we did at the South Bay COG. And also, if you've seen in the Daily Breeze and through our emails, we had a photo contest that closed. Our photo contest, we thought we'd throw this idea out there, and we got 150 responses. So we're going to be working feverishly in the next couple of weeks to go through all of those photos, and we will be announcing the winner or winners at our lunch at the General Assembly. After lunch, we're going to have like a TED Talks kind of thing from the CEO of Beyond Meat, and also from Varda Space Industries, which is talking about manufacturing in space. So, you know, we're really looking into the future, but also what cities are going to be preparing for. We're planning to close the whole thing off at 2 o'clock. And so we hope that you'll join us. As I said, it's free. We must have your registration because we are providing lunch. And so it's really important to us that we know exactly who's coming. We have sponsors, and we want to thank our sponsors. They're on all of our emails. We couldn't have done it without them. And we'll probably have a raffle too with some in-kind sponsorships. So I don't know if I left anything out, but that's our General Assembly. And we're doing that on top of all the other things. And I want to thank Ronson and Lori for, I think, what were great presentations today.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, power-packed agenda today. Ronson asked me if I wanted to put anything else on it. I said, no, I think we got enough. But yes, all the presentations are great. And just remember, if you do have questions or, you know, you kind of had something that you wanted to ask, call the COG office and they'll hook you up with, you know, someone that'll answer your questions. But I think we've done pretty well to get to where we are right now, and we're still a little bit ahead of time. So do we have any announcements?
Hi, this is Ashley. I have a brief announcement if it's appropriate at this time. Hi. So hello, everyone. I think many of you guys are aware that the county has been conducting a public process for fiscal year 22-23 homeless initiative budget. We had the draft recommendations were released last week, and we hosted a public webinar, and also the public comment period opened as well. The public comments can be submitted up to March 10th, I believe. And also on March 9th, the county will be hosting another virtual public hearing where the LA County residents and stakeholders can use the call-in number to give verbal public comments on the draft funding recommendations. But also these could also be emailed in, or there's also a comment option in the website as well. After that, the CEO will be going to the full board on May 5th with final funding recommendations for board's deliberation. And on May 17th, they will, let me take that back. On May 5th, the recommendations will be presented to the board, and May 17th, the board will consider and deliberate on the final funding recommendations. So this process is actually 2 months faster than last year, where the board deliberated in July. The year before that, they deliberated in September. So we certainly hope you'll visit the website that I just instant messaged, and that includes the calendar of events, as well as the PowerPoint presentation that was shared during last week's public webinar. It also includes the call-in information for the March 9th virtual public hearing as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. I just want to interject too. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Mentioning that. And I also want to give a special shout out to Ashley too. As part of the funding recommendation too, they're actually going to deliver about $10 million more to the cities and COGs on top of the $10 million they're already allocating through our first innovation fund dollars. So that was good to see. So so they're listening, and then Ashley has been a great advocate for us in terms of working with county council to kind of get our money from the first innovation fund rolled over to the second innovation fund, and has just been a great partner. So definitely want to give Ashley a big shout out for all the hard work that she's put in for us.
Well, big shout out to you and your team as well, and also SD4, who's been also really reinforcing CEO's message as well. So thank you for that, Ronson, and thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, so don't forget to visit the chat room because Ashley posted her information. You can grab that. Any other announcements? No? Okay, I'm going to let you go 7 minutes early then. Okay, so don't forget our next meeting would be for May, and we'll all have our stuff together and we'll meet again. How's that? Okay, we're done. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Bye.